my king is just chilling in the center. My king is vibing here. My king was the worst piece and the best piece in this queenless middle game. This is round 3 of the PA Amateur Championship. It's game in 75, delay 5. This is a no engine recap of the game until the very end of this video. I'm going to go share with you my thoughts, and hopefully we both learn something along the way. I am playing Levi. This is my second time playing him, and this is my second time playing him in the 3rd round of PA Amateur Championship. I played him last year in the 3rd round, so I played him. So now I'm playing him again, but now he's like 400 points higher rated. So definitely a good player, and I stayed extremely active in this game and extremely loose, extremely loose. So with that being said, let's hop right into it. I played E4, he played E5, and we both get our horsies out. And I play Bishop C4, the Italian, and he plays Knight F6. And I like to play D4 in this position, striking in the center, and after he takes, I play E5, and this is the Scotch Gambit, which after the game he told me he plays the Scotch Gambit. So, and he really likes it as white, and he knows that a lot of the positions are hard to play for black, at least he thinks so, and so he decides to play a little bit of a sideline. I don't really know if it's sideline or not, but it's not the most common way to play, but it is like a main line. I just said it was a sideline, but it's definitely one of the most common ways to play, but not the most common way to play, if that makes sense. Now I play E5, attacking his knight, and he plays D5, counter-attacking my bishop. So in this position, it's usually not a good idea to take on F6. Black has this huge center, and even if you take on G7, well, now black has this beautiful bishop on this long diagonal. Like white is just getting crushed in this position. So that's why after D5, I play Bishop E5, pinning the knight to the king. And after the knight steps forward, the knight goes in the center. I take the pawn on D4, and the knight cannot take because it's pinned, and I'm threatening to potentially take on C6. He plays Bishop C5. So this is where he said, so there's 2 main moves here, Bishop C5 or Bishop D7. And sometimes after Bishop E3, which is my move, defending my knight, and I play Bishop E3. I could castle, but it's not nearly as good because I'm not challenging this bishop on C5. The main benefit of the bishop on E3 is that I can take on C6, attacking the queen, and then take on C5. So I'm challenging this really nice bishop on C5 by playing Bishop E3. And after the game, he said like Bishop D7 is the main move, but he played a bit of a sideline by just castling. And he said that apparently there's a lot of ways that white can go wrong, and I believe him. But here I play pretty straightforward. I take the knight on C6, attacking his queen. He takes back, and so now my bishop on B5 is hanging, but I take his bishop on C5. It's not hanging because the knight on E4 guards it, and I'm attacking his rook. So he has to take my bishop first, because if he takes this bishop, then he's just going to be down in exchange after everything's said and done. So he takes my bishop, I take his pawn, and he moves his rook, and I take on D5. So white is just up 2 pawns. You know, if you see a lot of my other videos, I'm the one gambiting pawns, but actually in this position, I'm up 2 pawns. However, these pawns are not the best, and black gets just a lot of compensation. Like, black gets a rook on the 2nd rank immediately, if black wants to. And he does. He takes on D5, I take back, so we're just in a queenless middle game. You could call it an end game, I guess. Like, definitely if another set of minor pieces get traded, I guess it is an end game. But it's kind of like, you know, it's somewhere in between a middle game and end game already on move 13. So lots of trades. But he does take on B2. And it's really impossible to defend this C2 pawn. And there's only one move to guard it. And that's knight A3. Guarding the pawn on A3. Or guarding the pawn on C2. And I have, and in one of my over the board rated games, back in 2023, I had a 1900 play rook d8, which loses on the spot to, get this, castles. Attacking the rook, and wherever the rook moves, I have bishop f7 check, winning the other rook. So yeah, it was actually pretty wild. Yeah, castles queenside is an awesome move here, and you can't even take the pawn on a2 for what it's worth because the bishop on d5 guards it. So he doesn't play rook d8, which it would have been nice if he played rook d8. He said he wasn't even thinking about the move castles queenside, so that, like, he said it was pure luck by, that he didn't play rook d8. I don't know. I think if he was thinking about rook d8, he might like start thinking about tactics like castling. But, it would have been nice if he fell for it. He did play bishop f5 though, attacking the pawn on c2, and now I castle queenside. It's really the only way I can hold on to my pawns, but also everything is just a bit too loose here. Like, it really is. Like, this pawn on a2 and c2, like, they're going to be huge targets throughout the game. This pawn on e5 is perhaps a bit weak, although maybe I can play f4, but he has a lot of activity. Like, this knight on c5 is surprisingly really, really good. Like, I just cannot get rid of it, and it becomes a huge problem later in the game, as we'll see. So he moves his rook back to b6, so keeping his options open. Maybe he can double up. Maybe he'll go rook a6. Maybe he'll go rook somewhere else. I don't know. So rook b6 makes a lot of sense. And I play knight c4, attacking his rook. And my idea is that after he moves his rook anywhere, so he goes a6, attacking my pawn on a2, I rotate my knight back to e3. So that was my idea. I want to attack his bishop and support my pawn push to f5. Because really, like, what is white's advantage in this position? It's the majority of pawns on the king side. So I really just want to shove all these pawns down, perhaps create a passed pawn, infiltrate with my rooks potentially. It's kind of hard in this position because both the knight and the bishop guard the infiltration square on the 7th rank. So, but point is, I do want to get my majority of pawns rolling. And so that's the plan that I came up with to not only improve my knight, but to support my strategic play. I thought it made a lot of sense. He plays the most natural move, which is bishop e6. And suddenly I realized that, hey, my position isn't actually super easy to play. Because my original intention with bishop e6 was to play bishop b3. Because now if knight takes, I play a takes, and I just have a very, very solid position. Like I'm just doing great here. Like, white is just winning. With this extra pawn, f4, f5 incoming, like, the rook can go to a1. Like, white's just absolutely winning here. But I knew he probably wouldn't make it that easy for me. But after bishop e6, I realized, oh my gosh, if bishop e3, knight e4, so I need a fork. If I defend the fork, he plays knight c3, attacking my rook, attacking the pawn. If I go here, he can take. And I was like, well, if he goes here, he can go here. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, this just looks difficult. Bare minimum, this is just difficult. So, I realized that his knight just really hippity hops all over my position, which looked very, very bad. So I thought for a long time in this position. Let me see. I think for 30 minutes. I think for 30 minutes on this move, because suddenly I'm very concerned about my position. I thought I was crushing. Well, I thought I had a very easy plan, which is f4, f5, and I'm just going to bring my pieces in on the king side, and life's going to be great. But then suddenly I realized, like, I really can't hang on to this pawn. What am I going to do? I'm just not sure. And I ended up deciding to play f4. With the idea that if he takes, which he does, if he takes, I'm going to take back with the rook. If he takes the pawn on a2, I cannot take his knight that is hanging because he wins my rook in the corner. So I would probably double up on the d file, and if he goes check on a1, I'm going to go king either b2 or d2. I actually don't think I decided yet on which one to do. Let's say king d2, for example, then rook takes, king takes, and I thought this endgame, I'm not any worse. I think I also consider going king b2, and if rook takes, then knight takes. And if knight e4, that doesn't do anything now. There's no fork to be threatened. And my king can blockade the a pawn very easily. I get my rook. If he moves his knight to c5, then I get my rook in on the 7th. And even here, actually, he can't. There's no way for him to defend his knight. I guess he could go check here and here, but he loses to back rank checkmate. So there's no way for him to defend his knight. So I infiltrate on his 7th rank, and I have a very good game. That was my conclusion. That was my conclusion in my evaluation. But he was patient. He did take on d5. If he doesn't take on d5, what does he do? Is my question. He could play a move like g6, I guess. Maybe this was what he should have played. But now I might play g4, honestly. The g4 pawn is guarded by the knight, and I'm still trying to get f5 in, get my majority rolling. So I don't think it's that easy for him still. But and if he could go like rook b8, for example, then f5, then I really don't know what to play for him. Like if he takes, then I have and like takes like this, then I could definitely consider going check, and if here, then I could even go here, for example. I did be careful of like knight b3 check here, but I think I should be fine. Like king c3, knight's hanging, and then the knight would have to go back to like a5, for example. Then I can go at like f6 here and really box in the king from moving. Anyways, it can get a bit complicated. But the point is, my counterplay is very nice with f5. So I don't think he really has any alternatives to not taking on d5 because of g4, f5. I guess if g6, I have to be careful. Like I probably don't want to take this bishop on e6 because perhaps the knight can rotate back. And this might not be bad for me, but I'm not sure how good it is. It's not on e6, surprisingly guards c7 really well, so his 7th rank isn't as vulnerable as it might otherwise be. He could also take back with the pawn, and suddenly both pawns are hanging. Like even in this original position, I was thinking about, okay, maybe I can take here, and if he takes back with the knight, then I can defend with the king. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad for me. But the issue is that if I do take his bishop, instead of playing f4, then he can take back with the pawn, and now both pawns are hanging. And either way, he's getting a rook to the 7th rank, and it looked really annoying. At a bare minimum, it looked very annoying. So I played f4, he took the bishop, I took back, I attacked his knight, and he played knight e6 voluntarily. He decided not to play this in-between move, rook takes a2 to threaten the rook in the corner. And I was happy to see it because now I get full throttle. Well, firstly, my pawn on f4 is hanging. So if I infiltrate, then he takes, and this is just not good. Like, it might be okay, but why do I have this isolated e-pawn now? Why is it suddenly, why am I letting it be so hard for me to win? So that's why I played f5. Because I don't mind if his knight goes forward because he has no threats. He has no threats. He's attacked. Well, he is attacking my rook, but I already want my rook to go to 7th rank, attack his c6 pawn or his c7 pawn. And I'm gonna say, hey, these pawns are not overextended. These pawns are great. So he finally takes the pawn on a2 now, and he is threatening the skewer. So I play king d2. And my king is just chilling in the center. My king is vibing here. And it's surprisingly difficult to attack. This knight is 2 diagonal squares away from the king, meaning that it's going to take at least 4 moves for this knight to move before it can attack the king. This rook is very menacing on the 2nd rank, but this pawn is well defended by my king, which is shielded from any checks by my other rook on d7. And it's actually not so hard. It's not so bad for me. He plays rook a5, asking questions, saying, hey dude, you got a pawn here, it's hanging, how are you going to defend it? If I go rook e7, well, at the bare minimum, he has this check here, and my king has to venture out into the center. And if I go back, I mean, this also just looks very, very scary, but maybe it's okay. I mean, he also has this check too. Like, it's very scary. There's a lot of different checks here. My king is roaming around naked in the middle of the woods, alone and afraid. Like, it gets really, really scary if I defend with my rook. But, I was like, oh, easy, knight d5. Knight d5, easy. I block it with the knight. I block the rook's vision on the pawn with the knight. And if c6, which is what he plays in the game. Oh, wait. I do this in-between move g3 first. If I play knight d5, just hangs the knight. So that's why I play g3 first, forcing the knight to go to the edge of the board. When I was first calculating g3, I forgot that g3 gave away the h3 square for the knight. I actually thought the knight had to go to h5. If the knight does go to h5, I think white just wins on the spot, because this knight is so misplaced and is never getting back into the game. The knight on h3, however, is actually kind of useful, because it can rotate back to g5 and target the f3 square where it will check the king. And that became very, very relevant in this game. So I play knight d5. Now, since the black knight is no longer on f4, and he plays c6. Which I thought, okay, well, that's not that good for him, because I go knight e7 check, and I pick up the pawn on c6. And I'm guarding my knight. But, like I said, everything's loose here. This pawn is only defended by the knight, and the knight is not guarded by anything. And if he attacks it, which is what he does, if I move my knight, I lose the pawn, no bueno. But I come up with a really, really awesome move here. Knight e8. If you take this pawn, you lose the game on the spot. Knight f7, check. It's a fork. If you take me back, rankarunos, you're dunzos. Like, it is extremely, like, a very interesting solution. Alternatively, I thought about rook c7, but I was like, I just don't like how he has this option of a check. I could take it, but then he takes me. And I was like, is this really good for me? Like, my knight is actually trapped on the edge of the board because he's threatening rook d7 check. But I guess I could play e6. And if pawn takes, then I can bring my knight out. Or I could play pawn takes and my pawn covers the d7 square from the fork. So maybe I could do this. But it gets really dicey with knight g5. And then rook e1. He can even like just... Oh, he can't sacrifice for it. So maybe this is still okay. Although in this case, knight f3 check. Yeah, that's not that is not good at all. So yeah, the knight going to g5 is really, really annoying. So I thought about going rook c7, but I thought rook d8 just looked too annoying to me. I thought about rook d6, but I was like, okay, my rook is no longer on the 7th rank. I am up a pawn, but it doesn't look super easy. Maybe he would go rook c8 next. If I did play rook d6. Actually, looking at it now, this looks bad for white. Because if I ever move this knight, then he just takes the c2 pawn with check. So I'm actually really glad I did not play rook d6. I did not calculate rook c8 in the game, but I just looked dead lost here. Not dead lost, but I think I have to go rook d8 check. And takes. And I guess he has to defend the f7 pawn, so king g8. And maybe this is okay for me. Maybe this is okay for white because of rook e1, then knight g5, then rook e3. But then he can go sacrifice his rook. And after I take, he goes knight f3 check, picking up the rook again. But maybe this endgame, maybe I can still win this endgame because his pawn is weaker on a7 than my pawn is on c2. It's really hard for him to defend the a7 pawn. So maybe this endgame is still good for me. It's really hard to tell, especially from afar. So instead of all that, that's why I played knight d8. Knight d8, and he cannot take the pawn on e5. But now he plays knight g5. And I definitely underestimated this move. Because at first I thought, Well, mainly I just miscalculated. I should have just miscalculated because I was like, okay, h4. If he goes here, then I can go here. Oh, and then I can go here, and I'm winning. At least I thought I was winning. Although this doesn't look that winning because he takes here and then takes here with check. What was I thinking? This is not winning. I guess I could throw in this check, and after king here, I could go check here. King here, then here. Yeah, that's kind of convincing. I like it. Although in this case, rook e5 comes with a check. And if I go here, then he goes check here. And yeah, I'm just confused more than anything, to be honest. It's equal material, surprisingly. And honestly, white still might be better. I got this past c-pawn. Although this past a-pawn looks really annoying too. Oh, well, the knight's hanging, actually. The knight's hanging. I have to move the knight first. But yeah, so what a wild time. So at first I could go h4, but I realized that was bad. So I play e6. Because now, the knight on g5 also guards the pawn on f7. That's the main thing that it does. And if I can't kick it out now, like, I'm just not doing too well. And I can't play rook e1 because, of course, there's a fork still. So this is just really tough to play. And I realized that my only hope is to play e6. If he takes my pawn on f5, I have a couple options. One option is just play knight takes f7 and liquidate. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and okay. Neither side is probably going to win this. If I play rook e1, setting up back rank checkmate, he can go g6, and everything's guarded by him. Black has the outside passer, so black could be for choice in this position, but also it's harder to defend since the black's king is on the opposite side of the board, so maybe white is for choice. I don't know, but it's probably going to be a draw. The other option, if rook takes f5, is e7. And it looks really tough for black. How do you defend? If you go rook e8 in this position, then I could potentially play knight c6, guarding the e5 square from the black rook. And now I'm preparing to go rook d8 and get a new queen or win a rook, either way. And I don't really see a super easy solution. He could play knight e6. This is what I calculated. Knight e6. Then I could play rook e1. But then he could play rook check, and I would go back. And the point is, like, let's say he plays like king g8, for example. I'm going to sacrifice my rook for the knight and play rook d8. Although in this case he has king f7. So maybe I could also play knight e5, blocking the king from going to f7. And if he attacks my rook, now I go here because I would not be winning here, actually. It probably still is winning, at least somewhat. Maybe I could go here, for example. Yeah, I can go here. Because if king takes, then I take here. And then I can even take here, for example. I have two passers, and then try to win the a-pawn later. Or I can just take the a-pawn and say that I'm the only one that has a passed pawn. Well, I guess he has a passed e-pawn too. But point is, I think this is good for white. Not as winning as I thought it would be, though. It's so complicated. There's so many different moves to think about. Wait, now that I think about it, I could play the move rook d8, because if knight takes, I could do this move, and then if rook takes, knight takes, and I'm just up a piece. I'm up a knight. And I'm threatening checkmate, so let's go here. Yeah, that looks convincing to me. Very nice. Very nice move. I could play h4, and if like rook here, I could go here. I should be able to slowly but surely win this endgame. Okay. So after knight e7 check and all this happens, yes, I play e6. He plays rook e5. And after I saw that move, I was like, well, I have one hope. And that is to take on f7, take on f7, take on f7. And after he takes on f5, we've traded everything. He has some options on what to do. Like, he could take on f5 now. I think he loses on the spot because of rook takes, e7. The only way to stop the pawn from moving is rook e5. But I play a rook e1, and I win. So he cannot play rook takes f5. He has to take my rook first, and then play rook takes f5. And now I threaten checkmate, and he cannot stop it. Except he can because of g6. And if I do go check, then king g7. And now his king and his rook guard the promotion square of the pawn. And that's no bueno. So this happens in the game. I play rook e1, he plays g6, and I put my rook on the 7th rank. Now, I could force a trade of rooks here because I am a pawn and try to win this a7 pawn. But I don't think it works. Here's why. Because I can go check here, push, or promote, I mean, takes. If I try to win the pawn, it's too little too late here. Although, wait, why does this kind of look not that bad for me? I guess he could go here. And this might actually be winning. No, this looks like a draw to me. Unless there's some in-between moves there, or I'm sure there's different. This wasn't all forced. I'm sure there's different things black and white could have done there. But point is, I wasn't confident that it was winning if I forced the trade of rooks here. So I played. So after a5, I play king c3. Even here, I wasn't quite sure if it was winning, and I spent a long time calculating. I spent a long time. I was kind of like, okay, check here, and I was like, I'm honestly not sure at all. I really am not. Like, how am I winning this? Like, how? If I go here, he goes here. If I go here, he goes here. Like, he doesn't even have to let me off the edge of the board. He really doesn't. And if I go all the way down here, then, like, I'm actually the one that could lose this game. I'm the only one that could lose this game. And if I ever just like push my pawn or something, he just push his own pawn. And like I said, black might be the one that's pushing for a win here. Well, not might. They are the one pushing for a win here. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is not winning either. So after king c3, so I play king c3 because I want to wait for the right moment to force a trade of rooks. And sure enough, he gives it to me. Here, I think he just has to, instead of a5, I think he just has to play king g7. And allow the check and the loss of this pawn. And just play down a pawn. You have to just play down a pawn like this. This is the only way to proceed. It's uncomfortable. Black still might lose. But this is what you have to do. You have to do. Instead, though, he allows me to keep coming closer, and now my king's already on c3, and the one tempo makes all the difference because now I force a trade of rooks, and my king is already close. And I calculated it all out. I went down to 9 seconds, maybe at to 30 seconds at this point, but I ended the game with 9 seconds. Because now I play c4. Very, very key. If I take this pawn, once again, he traps me on the edge of the board. Black is the only one that can win this game, if anybody. Instead, I play c4. And you cannot get any closer to me. And what do you play? What do you play? He plays g5. Because what else is there to do? If you push your pawn, well, now after I take, black doesn't have opposition. I can get out of the edge of the board. Huge difference. I'm still winning now. Because if he goes here, for example, then I'm going to help my pawn move forward. And yeah, there's really nothing to do for black. He plays g5, which allows me to play c5 check. He has to go back, and now I take his pawn, because once again, if he goes here, my king is not stuck on the edge of the board, and this does happen in the game. He plays king c7, I go king c4, I start moving my king a little bit more towards that side of the board, I move my king over that side of the board, and now he plays b4, or sorry, g4, plays g4. And now, I calculate it all out, and I realize, okay, I can just run my king over and eat both of the pawns before he can get over. If he could come over to f5, guarding his pawn, I do have to double make sure like I calculated it correctly and make sure I have this h4 square forcing him to not defend the pawn, and like, but here it was just clearly winning. I win both pawns, and he plays it out. He plays it out till mate, actually, in this case. But luckily, I can checkmate with a king and a queen with 9 seconds on the clock, and like so, and I won the game. So very dramatic. He just needs to be a bit more precise in the rook endgame. That was really his only mistake, really, in my mind, was just the rook endgame, because he shouldn't have allowed me to trade rooks. If he keeps his rook in a pawn down ending, I think it's a draw. But we'll see what the engine says. Really, really crazy game. I'll see you guys in the next one.